Well, thank you for taking the time. I understand new album coming out early 2023. How long has it been in the works, sir? Because I know this has been a little bit of a rebuilding process for you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it a rebuilding, but just kind of a clearing, a spring cleaning of if of not even that, even more of like an undoing of filters. I've talked about that a lot, but it's been about a 4 year process. I mean, when I started Wild Blue, which was in 2000, doesn't matter. Um, at the end of that process, I felt like I still had a lot. I still had a lot of things that I wanted to do and say and work on and try. And so I wrote a song called Red Sky. And it was only like a fragment of a song. It was like a verse and a chorus, and but it carried this energy with it. And I felt like there was a lot of like alternative stuff that I left off of Wild Blue, even though there's a lot of alternative stuff that I put on Wild Blue. But I left a lot off. And I was like, maybe Wild Blue has this like evil twin, like maybe there's a b-side to this whole project. Well, as Wild Blue kind of grew and became its own entity, is like, I don't think it's a b-side. I think it's the next chapter. I think the next chapter is a chance for me to really dive into things that I just haven't done a lot of yet, or um yeah lately. So
Mhm.
um it started with Red Sky, and then a couple months went by. I was working on Red Sky, I'm working on Wild Blue. We were touring, and then I sort of took a break that summer and started the whole process with a song called the Wallflower, which I can't wait for the world to hear. But it was kind of like my anthem of being a wallflower, and it's just kind of like everything started coming out like Ed Sheeran describes it as like opening the tap in a house that hasn't been visited in a while. It's like just everything comes out at once. And so um, it started there in 2018, and then it kind of just like it developed as the Wild Blue story developed and as my story developed. And yeah, I've been kind of like it's there's a lot to unpack in how this album came to be. So I'm gonna give you the chance to tap out and pull the chute from hearing all of it for an hour and a half. But it's been a really fun process, and it's been alongside a lot of life changes too, which has been fun. But
Have you been
at
able
times.
to embark on that whole artistic journey without A&R people sniffing in?
Well, that's the funny part, right? So like I got so used to turning in 100 songs a year, and being told no. That was just like that was part of the course for me for 10 years.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, like there's positives to that too, right? I'm not sitting here saying it was all terrible, um, but
Right.
it did kind of condition me in a really odd way, to just like not trust myself and my instincts. So a lot of this album was wild because it was starting from a place of like, oh, I can do whatever I want, which is both awesome and terrifying when
Yeah.
you're so used to, so many people saying like no, or like you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or this isn't going to work, or and so in a lot of ways, like I kind of for a while had to. It's been a lot of training for myself just to say like, no, I can do this. I can trust myself. Um, I can try things, and the magic moments have come from me saying, like me kind of lining up like, oh well, maybe if I do this and I do this, like they'll like this and they'll say that this will satisfy this strategy, whatever. The magic moments have come from just kind of me being in the studio going, you know what, forget it, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and just like going for it, and then finishing the night with
Mhm.
just this feeling of like, yeah, my personality's there now. So it's been a learning process.
Going back in time to those A&R related difficulties that you had going on. I used to work at Viacom, the parent company of CMT, VH1, etc. And it was like 10-ish years ago. And your name was said so much at the office. It'd be like, we have another Hunter Hayes promotion, another one, another one. It's cool to see that you were able to taste all that mainstream stuff, yet in a full circle kind of way, realize, well, I'm also going to do my own thing, but at the same time, make commercially acceptable music.
All my favorite artists made their own genre. I can't imagine anyone um, trying to tell, and I'm by no means comparing myself, by the way. Let me just start with that.
Okay.
Um, but I can't imagine anyone telling, somebody like Stevie Wonder or, Elton John. And these are just the people that I look up to. What they are or what they aren't, or their music doesn't fit in a thing or this, that, whatever. And I'll never forget, like, Stevie and I were sitting together at an award show, and I was nominated for 2 awards. I didn't get either one of them, but he, after the second one, he leaned over and he reminded me that he was nominated for, I don't know, 40 something Grammys before he won his first one. Um, I could be wrong on that. Fact check me, but he had been nominated for a lot before he won. And he just kind of said, like, nobody got it until I did it. You know, nobody knew what it was until I just committed to it. And I think the first one that he did, like, with his new process where he produces and he plays, and was Sharia Moore, and it was just so inspiring to me. And it felt like the message that I think every young creator should hear is, like, no one is going to get it until you do it. No one has heard it. And if you can hear it in your head and you feel compelled to make it, because chances are no one's heard it yet. No one else has heard that. And so that's always been a really inspiring conversation for me, and that's kind of stuck with me. And I'm inspired by artists who, like, not set out to define their own genre, right? But, like, set out to be, uncompromisingly unique. And I think, within a body of work, when you do that, there's going to be things that people connect with, and if you continue to search, you continue to make, and you're not just making for any specific purpose. I think somewhere in there, people find their through line, people find the common thread, people find the connection, and they do connect with something, and you just have to keep making music until they do.
That award nomination stat brings to mind. I'm very slowly writing a book about David Lee Roth from Van Halen, and at the
Mm.
first, the second VMAs, I think he was nominated for 12 VMAs that year, and he lost all of them. And I mean, let's be honest, it's maybe a better story that he lost every single one that had he won one or two of those.
There is a really interesting perspective on that too. Yeah, I mean, listen, I want I want a Grammy. I've been nominated for a few, and I'm really grateful. That does not mean that I don't still want one, or as many as I can get. Um, and at the same time, um, I think that the story of failing before you succeed. First of all, I just think there's more richness in that life story sometimes, I think. um, the struggle, call it a struggle, call it a challenge, call it hurdles, call it, hard knocks or whatever, paying your dues.
Mhm.
um, I believe that there's a lot of beauty there, and there's a lot of growth there. um, God, I can't count how many times, like, I was really grateful to win, like, a couple of, like, new artist awards, new artist of the year awards, and then everybody's, interviewing me, and they're like, what about that dreaded that second album? And I'm like, nobody dreads it. Like, nobody's looking at it. I actually made it the album of my dreams for my second record. But I think that what I'm getting to is, I do think that, um, not uh yeah, the let's just say failure. Failure, I think a lot of people see as a bad thing, but at the end of the day, if you're somebody who's written 100 songs and sent them in to hear that they're all terrible, failure is not seen as a bad thing. Failure is seen as part of the process, and I think it's, in some cases, even though I'd like to avoid it at all costs, I think it's one of the richest parts of the process.
These days, when you write a song and you know it's not going to make an album, do you give it to your publisher or other artists to potentially cut?
Man, I would love for more people to cut my music. I'm also very selfish. Anything that doesn't make the project, I like keeping, because, like, early on, I finished the debut record. We were out on the road, and I was still just feeling it. I was still writing. I was still, like, inspired, and I believe creativity is a stream. I used to think that it was like a well, and if it ran dry, you were screwed. But I see it as a stream now. It is kind of endless, and you just, that beautiful quote of, like, inspiration is everywhere. It just has to find you working. Um, I think that, um, I I remember hearing how Coldplay was always 2 albums ahead,
Hmm.
and I was really inspired by that, because I do feel like, in order to make a great album, you can't be connected to the outcome. You can't be connected to, how it's going to be presented. if you're going to bare your soul, you have to bare your soul in a safe space and know that, you know, in a year's time, you'll be able to come back and edit it and fix it, or make it better or leave things out. And so I'm always kind of prepping for the next album slash like have the next album in a folder somewhere, you know? And so I'm kind of selfish. I try to hold on to, not try, I hold on to all of it, and just kind of like, because there's things that come back, like, you know, on the Wild Blue Complete record, like there's three songs that are like 8 years old. And they just weren't right for any other record, but they were right for Wild Blue. And so I think that happens a lot. Yeah, I think some songs just need their time.
Something you just said kind of blows my mind. If Coldplay's thinking 2 albums ahead and they had that BTS collaboration, does that mean that Coldplay knew that BTS was going to blow up?
Listen, Coldplay didn't plan on touring during 2020. I think they know more than they're letting on. I think somehow they have some like, yeah, some psychic abilities. It really freaks me out. But yeah, it is pretty wild. And but you know, the good thing about being so like, I guess, overly prepared, or like kind of having an abundance of material, is you do get to make kind of like game time decisions, and you're never sacrificing, you know, you're never losing, like, oh my God, we lost like the biggest song. You know, it's like, no, you've got a you've got a stockpile to choose from. So yeah, I think it's a clever way to work. And yeah.
So that's an interesting thing, that your approach to creativity, the well versus the spring, has changed over time. So does that mean you don't necessarily need to be inspired to write, that you can go, okay, I'm going to write a song today. And whether or not that's great is a different story, but you can write whenever you feel like it?
Mm. Well, I actually think that anytime you're, first of all, I think you can be inspired by anything. Um, the only mistake that I've ever made is just not sitting down with something that came up. Um, you know, when you're in a crowded place and a song comes to you and you're like, oh well, I'll remember that. You never do. And I think that anytime you're moved to sit down and pursue an idea, it is great. Like, I'm not saying that everything that I do is great. What I'm saying is, I think as a creator, anytime something moves you, you owe it to yourself
Hmm.
to allow it to move you, to allow yourself to be moved. And I think that the things that move you the most, make the best music, or make the best thing, whatever the art form is. Um, and whether or not it's great to other people, doesn't
Well,
matter when you make it. You
yeah.
know, um, that's something you decide later. That's something you sit down on the drawing board and you look at all your stuff, and you figure out who's going to connect with this and how the world will see this. Will this be commercially successful? That should be the furthest thing from the creative process. You know.
Well said. A friend of mine who co-writes and produces for other artists, his turning point was that he realized not all the stuff had to happen to him, that he could just basically channel the energy of the scenario or the other artist. Like, so if he's writing for a 23-year-old female, he puts himself in his shoes and goes, well, what are they going through? And then he could write a song about that. Sounds
Mm.
like you got there.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm learning a lot about it, because here's the thing, like when I, you know, growing up watching all my favorite artists, they were very autobiographical. And what that allowed was, that allowed me to connect with them, right? I felt like I was connecting with a person
Mhm.
because I connected with their music. And I've always been afraid to lose that. I've always been afraid, um, to step off of that being the premise of being an artist. And I've always sat here and thought, like, well, who cares about my story? Like, like honestly, like it's kind of self-indulgent to just only write about yourself all the time. But what I realized was, the things that make you feel things. You
Mhm.
watch movies all the time about things you've never been through. You leave the theater having really felt all of those things, and having connected with all those things. And whether or not you've experienced that exact thing, the feeling matches something you have experienced. And so I think I've been learning how to bridge that gap. And I've thrown away anything that feels inauthentic, and sort of like kept the things that, you know, I've been telling my friends, like, this album is less about a timeline, right?
Mhm.
And more about a through line, more about observations and how I connect with them, and how less about me as a human and more about being human. And that, you know, we don't necessarily all have to have the exact same experience to have common threads and feelings and yeah, and it's sort of experiences through other people. You know what I mean? So I've always wanted to find like that happy medium between like something I can connect with um, and something that isn't necessarily exactly my story, because it's just that I think that that can get exhausting when an artist is just constantly like, well, I just went through this thing and so this is what I'm writing about. Like, no, but I will tell you, like, I connect with it on a feeling level,
Yeah.
and I think there's power there.
Red Sky, I believe, is the name of the album that's coming out next year. How far along are you on it? For example, I'm assuming it's not mixed and mastered. You're still recording and paring down the songs.
Well, it's funny because every song has had like 3 or 4 different versions of itself.
Hmm.
There's also like seasonal versions. There's collaboration versions. So there's one song that I've worked with 3 different people on, and still felt like it, it, I don't feel like it's there yet. Like I don't feel it on a feeling level. So um, it's been quite the process. It's been finished 5 times. You know what I mean? And at the same time, no, not the whole thing is mixed and mastered, but I'm getting closer to like um, going back to what we were talking about earlier. When you get into a place where you can do whatever you want,
Hmm.
um, you have to undo the like I still ended up doing versions, assuming that I was going to send it in and be told like that will never work. So I had to kind of undo that and find my way of just like, the way that Dear God happened. It was very like, we wrote the song on Wednesday, Thursday or something. I did a video shoot on Friday. I could not stop hearing the song. We hadn't done a demo for it, but I could hear it. And I got home 8 o'clock, opened a Logic session, started from scratch, started with the vocal bit in the beginning, texted my buddy who's a videographer, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to finish this song tonight. If you want to come over, great. He did, finished by like 2 a.m. A lot of these songs, I had to find each song through that same exact process
Right.
and sort of wait for that process to meet me, you know what I mean? In a space where I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. I can do what I want. I can do whatever I want. And what I mean by that is not like I'm going to do whatever I want. It's just like I'm going to
It,
follow the music
it's
and I'm going
not
to
the
trust the
South
music.
Park, I do what I want. It's the
Right.
Hunter Games, I do what I want, with logic and consideration involved.
Well, yeah, for sure. So not the whole, and also part of this process is I'm working with some fantastic mixing engineers. That's why they're credited on every song. But I'm also part of the mixing process. I'm really enjoying that. I've got my own console at home. We're actually about to integrate some tape into the process because I want this album to feel very. I want this album to represent all the things that I love, which is like, a lot of real instrumentation and a lot of old sounding things that just feel very warm. Around all the musical decisions that we're making. I think that's kind of the foundation.
Makes sense to me. Next question, because you said before, hey, when you come out of the movies, that kind of thing. Do you have a TV recommendation that you could pass along, a show that you're watching right now that you're saying, hey, more people should be watching this? Because every time the wife and I start a new show, we're done with it in 3, 4 days and we go, what's next?
Yeah, great question. Well, I was always really obsessed with, me and my friends are
Hmm.
oddly obsessed with a lot of History Channel series. And there's a few new ones. Like there was one who was like Men Who Built America. There's a new one. There was Cars That Built the World or America. Like engineering that changed the world. There's a whole bunch of History Channel series that I personally love.
Yeah.
There's that. There's also a brand new season of Grand Tour coming out. So I always encourage everybody to enjoy that. That absolute chaos. Um, and then beyond that, I really like documentaries. I love learning how, like, especially about like other artists. There were a couple great ones that came out last year. Yeah, about, I think This Is Pop was a really good one. There was a lot of like explanations on how certain genres came to be and how they
Mhm.
the history of them, which was really really educational.
So you're a student of the game. That's what I'm learning here.
Well, as much as I am, it's funny because the people that I look up to make me feel like I know absolutely nothing about anything. So I think, yeah, there's this continuous, I guess, I want to know more. I want to know more and be better.
Yeah, the more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing. So the
Yeah.
last question I got for you is a dumb one.
Okay.
Ready? Does anyone call you Double H instead of
Yeah.
Triple H? People do call you Double H.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't, when I first started, I was like 18, and I think my tour manager called me like kid at the time. And I was like a combination of like humble because I was just getting into the industry, but also like I have a lot to prove. And I was like, don't ever call me kid. I was such a jerk. So he was like, okay, is it cool if I call you Double H? And he kind of started the trend. And so yeah, a lot of people call me Double H, and I love it actually. I think
So are
I
there any
think it's cool.
photos of Double H with Triple H?
Say that again.
Are there any photos of Double H standing next to Triple H?
I'd know, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Which
Then
I
we have
feel like I
plenty
would
of
be.
goals for 2023. So the bottom
Yeah.
line is this. I'm looking forward to Red Sky. I'm looking forward to seeing you grow as an artist. It's incredible that you're 15 years into this career and you're still super young. So keep it
Yeah.
up, and congratulations
Thank you,
on
man.
pushing the ball forward so steadily, Hunter.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, and hope to see you live in New York in the near future, 2023.
Yeah, please, and thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, man. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.
Awesome. Cheers, man.
Thanks.
For more full-length celebrity interviews, visit us at sidewalkstv.com, our YouTube channel, and don't forget to follow us on social media.